Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Wellbeing Portal podcast, where we feature key experts in wellbeing for you so that you can basically learn tips, tricks, and ways to empower you at work and as you as an individual. And there's no better person to meet today than Angela Walker. Angela Walker is an expert in food for the brain. She really helps empower you to learn really easy and usable tips and tricks to help you know what you need to eat, what you shouldn't, how to really protect your brain and find power tools for you to respect your brain, if you will, to take you forward. So she has her own online program that she really helps take you through courses and teach you how to make your own brain your power tool. Because let's face it, what can we do if we don't have a clear mind, clear focus, and the ability to function? So I want to now take no more time, but then to introduce you to the lovely Angela, and she can give you some tips and tricks in this next 15 or 20 minutes on how you can make your brain a power tool for you. So I'll just bring her up. Bear with me. Here we are. So introducing the wonderful Angela to you. And Angela, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for bringing me on the show, as it were. I'm a nutritionist. I've been trained and qualified for nearly 15 years. My kind of passion and speciality is in the brain, and I guess that's how I got interested and really curious about nutrition, because when I first started experimenting with all of this and started looking at my own diet and what I ate, I was always fascinated by what the changes I would make to my diet, how they would affect the way that I feel and how I would feel in my brain. You know, at the time I was probably pretty close to just having a real kind of stressful time with work and life, and had always kind of found my emotional health was not terribly strong. So that's always been my real focus and curiosity and interest. And now I've developed the Food for Thought program as a way to kind of make that very, very accessible to people.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm sure most people can relate to it, because really one of the things it doesn't really matter what your modality is or your line of expertise. It doesn't, to me, matter if you're working in the world of well-being or if you're doing something completely different. One thing that we're all aware of is that you have these days where there can be things that you do and you're not quite sure what it is that make you not function how you know you can. Like I like to call it the fuzzy brain, or before I kind of learned lots of tips and tricks, I like to call it I called it cotton wool. Like I felt like there was cotton wool kind of stuffed in my head, and it was blocking the clear thoughts and ability to function. So I think today what we're going to do for you, the viewer, is to just give you a really clear starting point. And so what Angela's going to do is we're going to focus on the 3 top tips to really help you learn what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and just how to get started on optimizing your potential to really empower yourself. Because this is all about you. It's about our daily decisions. And often in wellbeing, we kind of think, oh, it's long-term, too much effort. This is what I feel like. And the kind of what we feel like drives us. But, if you understand what you feel like drives you, and then you can connect the dots as to what's going to be happening later down the track, then you might be a little bit more mindful, and it's just actually about you having the power tools. Angela's really going to give you 3 top tips, starting points, to really be able to empower you to know what decisions to make, and also not just the decisions, but what your actions do now and what you're feeling like now, how it connects to what's going to happen later. Because sometimes we feel like things and then we just think, I really need it, or I feel like it. But if you can understand how that's going to affect your brain, then you kind of decide, if that's worthwhile, and then you can decide on making better decisions, or if it's worth making the decision to have something bad. So we're going to talk about the 3 top tips. What are the most common things that you can actually do, or that people, what are the more common mistakes people make? What's a habit switch you could do to really upgrade your brain? And and what's a range of really good brain foods, not just to take you through snack time and things, but to really power you through life. So that's what we're going to talk about today with Angela. So, Angela, shall we start straight in at number 1? What would be your first top tip?
Well, my first top tip, first of all, I love the way you set that up, because I have this expression that I often use, that you can give someone a diet and you feed them for a week, teach someone how their body and brain works, you've taught them for life. And that's really, exactly what you're saying, exactly my approach. So my first tip would be to understand how sugar is working and how you are using sugar. And I think sugar is quite a misunderstood thing, because on the one hand, it is the main fuel that our brain uses. So in many respects, like, our brains absolutely need it. But, and here's the but, if we have lots of sugar and not an awful lot else around it, no fiber, no fats, no proteins, no phytonutrients, no vitamins, no minerals, then that sugar, the way that sugar gets used, you get a very big spike in energy for the brain, but then you get the crash. And that then leads us to wanting more sugar, because that's the quickest way to kind of drive the blood sugar back up. So understanding that means that we can understand where we get those cravings from. So where we get that I need sugar from is simply that you've sunk into a low blood sugar kind of situation. So again, once we understand that, we've got the tools, or we can use the tools to avoid that. And the trick is to make sure that you always have with your sugar, you always have protein, you have some fiber around it, which is why, the whole grain version of bread is better than the white bread, why fruit in its whole form is better rather than fruit juice, for example, because it's got fiber kind of built in. And this, having the sugar in that way, it means that it is more steadily available to the body. So you get this gradual release of it, your body can handle it, and it doesn't get that crashing down at the end. So I think that's a super important first step, to have that awareness of sugar and how we're using it. Longer term, if we've had lots and lots of sugar, then we're at risk of, then our body becomes what we call insulin resistant. So it's sort of, the sugar can't get in to the cells and get used in the right way and get used in the brain in the right way. And that sort of that builds up over time as a result of just always reaching for simple sugary snacks. So that is definitely number 1.
Number 1. Okay, so that's fantastic. And I think that that's a really important thing, because we all know, hey, we all hear this thing about sugar, but I think that it's just so important to actually be able to see that mechanism. Like, it's not about don't have the sugar, especially, let's face it, that afternoon energy slump, that I think is probably a great thing for us to lead in with the number 2 point of number 2 with. But the afternoon energy slump, one of the things I think as well with the sugar factor is that, as Angela said, your brain needs the glucose. So your brain, like, it requires it, it likes it, which is sometimes why when you have the wrong thing, you get into this big energy cycle dip, because once you have had too much sugar, then it's like it gets taken out, then you need more sugar. And the reason why you need more sugar is because your body's had to remove too much of it. And then your brain is like, oh, jeepers, what was her name again? And is this right, Angela?
Exactly.
This is the cycle of why it's not good to have all of this sugar as well for your brain, because it's basically your brain needs the sugar to think. But if you have too much of it, your body's mechanisms have to remove that, then you can't think. And then over time as well, that's the link now between the type 2 diabetes and dementia and Alzheimer's. They actually parallel that type 2 diabetes together with Alzheimer's and dementia, because it affects your memory so much.
Totally.
Yeah. And so, Angela, so if we kind of take that framework of like leading on from the sugar that you said is really, and that's my experience too, it's people's number one kind of excess or deficit. And the other thing is, as well, is what do you see the common, before we kind of move on to the next one, and when, I saw a lot of clients, I'd see them saying, well, I don't have a lot of sugar, but actually they did, they just weren't eating candies. What are your top lists of the sugars that you notice most people are having that they don't even necessarily know they're having?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It really depends on the person and it depends on their lifestyle, but alcohol is there's a lot of hidden sugar in alcohol. It's not hidden, but we choose not to see it, shall we say. And then you could say drinks kind of generally wider. It could be either the putting sugar into our hot drinks, or it could be the kind of cans of sugary drinks that we kind of can lean to, thinking, oh, but it's just a drink, it's not food. Well, actually there can be a lot of sugar in there. It can be things that, again, on the surface seem like they're good, such as fruit juices. So again, when you've extracted the fiber out of the sugary food, so you've made it a juice or you've made it a white bread, unrefined kind of cookies and these kind of things where they've got a lot of refined sugar in them and they've had the fibers taken out. So those are some of the common ones, I think.
Exactly. Okay, that's great. And because I think that it's a real misconception about, well, I don't eat cakes. Well, actually, you go and have a bottle of wine a night, and that's actually sugar in a completely different form. But it's still the same thing. Your body still sees it as the same level of sugar. So, okay. So number 2, what would you say if there was going to be, just a habit switch? And let's take that framework of the afternoon energy slump, because I think for us professionals and people that are working, especially, it really is a universal phenomenon, this afternoon energy slump, that we feel like it just is a given. It's kind of like it just is. But I think what people don't understand is it actually just isn't. It's created by ourselves. We've created it through our patterns of what we've done usually with our foods. So what would there be as an energy switch that could actually take place? I mean, in energy, what could there be as a habit switch that could take place for people if we focus on an afternoon energy slump habit that we're going to replace? So what is common and what should they potentially switch it out with?
So again, kind of following that same principle of, I don't want to give people diets. I don't want to give people meal plans. I want to give them concepts that they can work with. I have this build a plate concept. So it's basically you imagine your plate of food and you say half of it is going to be the vegetables or whole fruit. A quarter of it is going to be your protein source. And then the final quarter is going to be your slow release carbohydrates or your bread, your pasta, your rice, your potatoes, these kind of things. So taking that as a concept, I want people to look at every meal or every snack that they have and see if it's got all of those components, see if it's following that kind of plan. So what that means is, if you're getting that mid-afternoon slump, first of all, look at your lunch, because the chances are that your lunch missed out on one of those parts of that plate. Maybe it didn't have enough protein. That's I wouldn't say it's the only one, but it's the most common one that gets missed out in a meal. It's that protein source. So look at your previous meal, perhaps look at your breakfast as well, because we definitely get a kind of a pattern that runs through the day. And then look at the snack that you're going to choose and make the snack follow that pattern. So rather than it being just a piece of fruit, you maybe have some nuts and seeds with it, so that you've got the proteins and you've got some of the fats as well, which help to kind of slow that release down. So take what you were already eating and kind of build on it to create that plate ratio.
And if someone was going to go for something that they shouldn't, like, I'm just going to have that chocolate, what would you say? Like, what would you do with that? I'm going to have it anyway. So how can you make it work for me better?
Simple. Just have it with a little bit of protein.
Perfect. So exactly the same rule applies.
Exactly the same rule.
So what Angela's saying is just take that plate rule and break it into whatever you're having. So then you're basically the chocolate becomes the carbohydrate ratio. And then you're saying, okay, and now I'm having it with some nuts, which is the protein ratio. And then I'm going to have it with some fruit, berries, strawberries, blueberries, apple, whatever. And that becomes the vegetable ratio.
Exactly.
So okay, good.
It gives you a really simple visual clue from which you can take everything forward.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, fantastic. So now we've got the sugar as the biggest kind of adverse effect on the brain. We've got the top tip really for any meal or afternoon snack is looking at that plate ratio and then just translating it into basically saying combine things together, and then it's going to help support you. And looking at your lunch beforehand to make sure that it's not just carbohydrate dominant, but it's got that protein. And so then moving forward to the top tip for the third tip, if you were going to kind of give a smorgasbord of just tips on which foods can feed your brain, the most optimally to take people forward. And as you said, it's not about diet, it's really about giving them empowered tools to be able to self-manage things and not have a fad, but to be able to really feed themselves what they need to long term. What would be a smorgasbord overview of those foods?
Yeah. Okay, so something like oily fish. So, the oily fish, the smashed fish. So salmon, mackerel, avocados, anchovies, sardines, the haddock. Those fish have got the really good long chain fatty acids that our brain needs. So they're fantastic for any kind of brain foods. The dark berries are super important because they've got the phytonutrients that really kind of help stimulate brain plasticity and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, so which helps kind of your new brain cells to fire up and to get that more plasticity in the brain. Mm-hmm. Don't get stuck on things like, blueberries. Blueberries have done a fantastic marketing job, but there's lots of other kind of berries as well. Even things like mulberries, some of my favorite ones, which are fantastic dried. So getting, just reach it out a little bit in terms of the variety of what you're eating. The nuts and seeds. So again, you've got really great fats. Nuts and seeds are sort of perfect food because they have got a bit of protein, they've got a bit of carbohydrate, they've got some good fats. So if you are going to have a food on its own, make it a nut or a seed, because at least it's getting close to that plate ratio. Mixing it up, getting lots of the whole grain carbohydrates in, things like the brown rice, things like quinoa. And of course, I wouldn't be a nutritionist if I didn't talk about vegetables. So making sure that you've got a kind of good variety of vegetables, especially the green leafy vegetables.
Yes.
And what I have that I can share with you is a list that I call my Better Brain Foods list, where we literally go through all the different kind of categories, classes of foods. And I talk about which of those are really, really good and beneficial for the brain. So it's a very simple tool to have. And I can share that with everyone here.
That will be so fantastic, because I really, think that it's important to emphasize to anyone listening to this today is, don't try and be perfect. What you need to do is make progress and make it consistent, and also know you're making the right decisions. So thank you, Angela, for offering that, that really useful tool, because what that can do is, if you print that out or you have that, it can really help empower your decisions, that even if you don't really know why, at least you know that it is good for your brain. And the brilliant thing about this handout is it also, Angela's made it so user-friendly that it says which things aren't good as well. So it gives the categories of the different foods, and so you can be like, oh, I feel like some cheese today, and you can actually see which cheeses are better for your brain than others, and then it can help drive a positive decision. So I think that is so useful. I think that those are really great starting points for everyone. Just remember, everyone, sugar, it doesn't have to be an absolute no, but just do it the right way, do it sensibly, combine it. Same again for the top tips for the afternoon snacks, or for just making your food choices. Think about the plate and make sure you've got a variety of options. And then when you're wanting to make choices for your food in general, just make sure that you've got things that feed your brain, like the fish and the colorful vegetables, the colorful berries, and then the green vegetables, and it will hold you up. And I think, Angela is one of the amazing collaborators within the Wellbeing Portal, and she goes into other detail on brain health and really how to optimize yourself and become more resilient. And I think that it's just something, without our minds, we actually have nothing. Like, you need your mind to be able to make the most of you. And it's something I feel like isn't valued enough. And it's so hard to get it back when it's gone. So the most empowered thing that you can do for yourself is to respect your brain and to feed it, because it's not an automatic pilot. You've got to be able to really enrich it and give it the right nutrients and respect it and understand what's damaging it, and that every action that we have has actually got an impact on your brain, for good or for worse. So make the right decisions. And Angela, she's got a whole program called Food for Thought. That is an online program that helps empower you to empower your own brain. And Angela, just tell everyone where they can find you.
They can find me over on Instagram. My Feed Yourself Smarter is my kind of brand name. The Food for Thought is one of the programs that I run. So best place where I'm sort of most active is on Instagram, Feed Yourself Smarter. I look forward to connecting with all of you very soon.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. And if anyone wants to reach out for us, has any questions, I'm sure that Angela will be happy to either connect with you directly or through here. And we look forward to hearing how you've gone in your refocus journey, in your brain journey, in your potential to be your best self. That's what it's all about. We want to help you evolve. We don't want to help you be perfect, but we want to help you progress you. So regardless of where you are today, you can always become a better version of yourself tomorrow, regardless of how far you've had to go or how far you've already come. So just make sure that you're looking after you and empowering you to be the best version of yourself. And thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Angela. Bye.